Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Friday, December 12, 2025. Kilmar Abrego Garcia checks in at an Immigration and Customs Enforcement office in Baltimore under protection of a judge's order not to be rearrested. He said he believes the injustice done to him by the Trump administration will come to an end. House Republican leadership say a vote to extend Affordable Care Act enhanced premium subsidies may happen next week. The tax credits are set to expire at the end of the month, raising costs for millions of Americans. State legislators are pushing back against President Donald Trump's executive order limiting state regulation of artificial intelligence. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth travels to Huntsville, Alabama, Rocket City, to visit defense contractors and U.S. Space Command. Walter Cronkite Awards for excellence in political journalism are handed out today. We'll hear from two winners, CBS 60 Minutes correspondent Scott Pelley and Jon Stewart, host of The Daily Show, which won in a new comedic commentary category. And today is the 25th anniversary of the Supreme Court's decision in Bush v. Gore to prevent a new presidential election vote recount in Florida in the year 2000, and that meant Republican George W. Bush had won, defeating Democrat Al Gore. Associated Press writing from Baltimore, a federal judge blocked U.S. immigration authorities on Friday from re-detaining Kilmar Abrego Garcia, saying she feared they might take him into custody again just hours after she had ordered his release from a detention center. The order came as Abrego Garcia appeared at a scheduled appointment at an Immigration and Customs Enforcement field office roughly 14 hours after he walked out of an immigration detention facility in Pennsylvania. Abrego Garcia became a flashpoint of the Trump administration's immigration crackdown earlier this year when he was wrongly deported to a notorious prison in El Salvador. He was last taken into custody in August during a similar check-in. That was reporting from Associated Press. Kilmar Abrego Garcia spoke outside the ICE field office in Baltimore. We'll hear from him in just a moment, but also there, Congressman Glenn Ivey, Democrat of Maryland.
Kilmar, it's great to see you. Welcome home.
Yeah.
Welcome home. This time he's going to get to stay home, right?
That's right.
That's right. The Trump administration's behavior has been nothing less than shameful, from start to finish. They stay after him because they knew they made a mistake when they took him away the first time, when they kidnapped him the first time, but they couldn't admit it, and they pretended like they couldn't bring him back from El Salvador because they said they didn't have the power to do it. 3 courts told them to do it. Even the Supreme Court told them to do it. They still didn't want to comply, but eventually brought him back. But you know what they did then? In order to cover up the fact that they hadn't brought him before, they brought these fake charges down in Tennessee, the criminal charges. It's shameful. It's shameful. I think those charges are going to go the same direction that the James Comey and Letitia James charges went, right? That's right. Because they're all coming from the same place. So now he gets to come back today after the judge in Greenbelt said, and did she dress down the Trump administration or what? Did you read that opinion? Yes. She told them all about themselves and the misconduct and the way they evaded the law and been treating the law incorrectly and been acting illegally. So he's here today because the judge stood up in Greenbelt and said he should be here. A judge stood up in Tennessee and said he should be here. The Supreme Court said he should get his due process, and he's going to get that. When we fight,
we win.
When we fight,
we win.
And we're going to win this. Now, he's going to go in there in a minute. Last time we were here and they took him inside, he didn't get to come out immediately. But we keep winning. The judges keep telling them they're wrong. The judges keep telling them to stop breaking the law. The judges keep telling him to let him come home. Kilmar, welcome home. You're going to get to stay this time. When we fight,
we win.
And we will not stop fighting.
That's right.
Stay strong.
That's right. That's right.
Congressman Glenn Ivey, Democrat of Maryland, at a news conference and rally outside the ICE field office in Baltimore. Kilmar Abrego Garcia also spoke through an interpreter.
Y ahora estoy aquí de pie frente a ustedes y la lucha seguirá. Yo seguiré de pie, no le bajaré la cabeza a nadie. Siempre estaré de pie sobre todas las injusticias que ha hecho este gobierno.
I stand here today with my head held up high, and I will continue to fight and stand firm against all of the injustices this government has done upon me.
Quiero también pedirle a esa gente que está pasando por situaciones que yo estoy pasando, mucha injusticia, detenidos, a esa gente que está detenida, a sus familiares, les pido que tengan fe, que es un proceso de Dios, cosas buenas vendrán a nuestras vidas.
I want to tell everybody who is also suffering family separation, God is with you. This is a process. Keep fighting.
Quiero que sigan luchando como yo lucho, que no bajen la cabeza a nadie, no bajen su mirada a nadie, siempre con fe. La fe mueve montañas y sigan luchando. Este es un caso que lo van a ganar porque toda la injusticia se hará justicia.
I tell you to hold your head up high. Never hold your head down. Stand firm. Know that this is something that is called injustice, and you will win.
No importa lo que este gobierno diga, al final yo sigo creyendo que este es un país de leyes, un país de justicia, y sobre toda esta injusticia que se ha hecho, vamos a llegar a su fin.
Regardless of this administration, I believe this is a country of laws, and I believe that this injustice will come to its end.
Through an interpreter, Kilmar Abrego Garcia outside the ICE field office today in Baltimore. In Washington, D.C., Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem spoke at the Homeland Security and Defense Forum 8th Annual Border Security Symposium. The forum describes itself as America's partnership for homeland, cyber, and national security, and she spoke about immigration enforcement.
For 4 years, the Biden administration pulled DHS and other vital parts of our national security away from our core missions. There's no clearer example than the disastrous open border policies that we saw perpetuated and the invasion which was facilitated by the administration. They brought crime and violence and unprecedented drugs to our communities. Terrorists flooded our country, and countless citizens of adversarial countries waltzed right in over our border. Customs and Border Protection was prevented from doing its job, and worse, they were used many times to funnel aliens in as quick as possible. President Trump has put an end to that, delivering the most secure border in American history. In fact, we've just reached our 7th month of 0 illegal aliens released into our streets. Border crossings are down over 93% year over year. Meanwhile, we're removing illegal aliens who came in under the Biden administration. By the end of this year, 2.5 million illegal aliens will have left our country. That includes over 600,000 that were detained and deported, but 1.9 million virtually have left voluntarily through our communication efforts, through the efforts of facilitating plane tickets, and also $1,000 reimbursements for those who choose to go home voluntarily with the opportunity to come back the right way someday. We have seen an incredible amount of interest in fixing things that have been done wrong in the past. As a result, we have also deterred countless would-be border crossings from entering into our country. DHS, as you know, was founded after 9/11. It was founded to put all of the government agencies and components under one umbrella to fight terrorism and to protect the homeland. And that's exactly what we're doing under President Trump. From January to November of this year, ICE alone arrested and removed over 1,100 known or suspected terrorists that were on our terrorist watch list from January through November. And we're driving that number up every day. That is not counting the individuals that were arrested and encountered by other agencies or departments. President Trump has designated many cartels and gangs, other criminal groups such as foreign terrorist organizations, and designating them under that allows us to go after those killers with more tools than we've ever had before. Through our Homeland Security Task Forces, which I co-lead alongside our Attorney General Pam Bondi, DHS is working with other departments as well as our international partners and organizations to crack down on cartels and terrorists and other transnational criminal organizations.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem at the Homeland Security and Defense Forum Border Security Symposium today in Washington, D.C. New York Post writes that Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy threatened Friday to yank $73 million in federal highway funding meant for New York after an audit found more than half of the Empire State's commercial trucking licenses were issued to foreign-born drivers in the U.S. illegally. Duffy issued the warning after the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration reviewed all non-domiciled commercial driver's licenses, CDLs, issued by the New York Department of Motor Vehicles and found a 53% failure rate of its roughly 32,000 CDLs. Reporting from the New York Post, Secretary Duffy held a news conference at DOT headquarters in Washington.
As we've done this nationwide audit, we found the worst offender, which is the state of New York. 53% of New York's non-domiciled CDLs were issued unlawfully or illegally. Now, what New York does is, if an applicant comes in and they have a work authorization for 30 days, 60 days, 1 year, New York automatically issues them an 8-year commercial driver's license. That's contrary to the law. That's one offense. But we also found that New York many times won't even verify whether they have a work authorization, they have a visa, or they're in the country legally. So they're just giving 8-year commercial driver's licenses to people who are coming through their DMV and sending them out on American roadways. And again, they're endangering the lives of American families. I don't like that I have to do this, but the law requires me to do this. I'm going to give New York 30 days, because that's what the law requires, to come into compliance with the rules that have been long-standing at the Department of Transportation. If they come into compliance, we're going to work with them. If New York refuses to come into compliance, because Kathy Hochul, for some reason, believes that we should have unqualified truck drivers on American roadways, we are going to pull tens of millions of dollars as phase one for the state of New York.
Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy at a news conference in Washington. New York State DMV spokesperson Walter McClure putting out a statement. Secretary Duffy is lying about New York State once again in a desperate attempt to distract from the failing, chaotic administration he represents. Here is the truth. Commercial driver's licenses are regulated by the federal government, and New York State DMV has and will continue to comply with federal rules. Every CDL we issue is subject to verification of an applicant's lawful status through federally issued documents reviewed in accordance with federal regulations. This is just another stunt from Secretary Duffy, and it does nothing to keep our borders safer. We will review USDOT's letter and respond accordingly. That statement from a spokesperson with the New York State Department of Motor Vehicles, Walter McClure. This is Washington Today. From Associated Press, the Senate failed to get anywhere on the health care issue this week. Now it's the House's turn to show what it can do. Speaker Mike Johnson is in a last-minute sprint to develop a Republican alternative as his party refuses to extend tax subsidies for those who buy policies through the Affordable Care Act, also called Obamacare, which are expiring at the end of the year. Those subsidies help lower the cost of coverage. Johnson huddled behind closed doors Friday morning, as he did days earlier this week, working to assemble a package for consideration as the House focuses the final days of its 2025 work on health care. That was from the Associated Press, and late this afternoon, we hear they have published the bill that they plan to bring up next week. Also, there is a possibility that an amendment will be allowed to be offered that will extend the ACA expiring tax credits. Meanwhile, there are two bipartisan discharge petitions to extend those credits, and if either gets a majority of House members to sign on, that would force a vote. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat from New York, was asked at a news conference today whether Democrats might take that route.
You say that at least 4 Republicans are needed to cross the aisle to get health care done. Well, there are nearly a dozen Republicans who have signed on to the discharge petition for both the Fitzpatrick bill and for the Gottheimer bill. Why not endorse one of them or both of them and encourage your members to sign on as well to get the ball rolling in that respect?
We're actively reviewing those 2 discharge petitions, and we'll have more to say about it early next week. But what is clear, time is running out. Where were these Republican ideas over the last several months? You know what? They were so busy shutting the government down. Donald Trump's busy playing golf. They could find $40 billion to bail out their right-wing dictator friend in Argentina. They're pardoning people like George Santos and Rudolph Giuliani. And they're running around trying to promote their one big ugly bill, which enacted the largest cut to Medicaid in American history. That's what got the ball rolling on the Republican health care crisis. And as a result, hospitals, nursing homes, and community-based health centers are closing all across the country, including in rural America. They ripped food assistance out of the mouths of hungry children, veterans, and seniors, and they did all of that with great urgency so they could reward their billionaire donors with massive tax breaks. And they made those tax breaks permanent. And now at the 11th hour, they're scrambling. It still remains the case that the most direct path forward is a straightforward extension of the Affordable Care Act tax credits. And there's one discharge petition that does that. And it has 214 signatures. And all we need are 4 Republicans to join us.
Just to follow up on that, though, I understand that your ideal path is a clean extension, but Republicans have made clear that they will not go for a clean extension. So would you be willing to settle for something that's not a clean extension in the name of saving these subsidies?
We're going to evaluate every single good faith proposal, but it has to meaningfully provide certainty to the American people who are at risk of having their health care ripped away from them. These Republicans made those massive tax breaks for their billionaire donors permanent. And we've said from the very beginning, we just want to make sure that everyday Americans, middle-class Americans, working-class Americans have a similar level of certainty. That's not too much to ask for in the wealthiest country in the history of the world.
Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat from New York, the minority leader at a news conference today on Capitol Hill. Congressman Don Bacon, Republican of Nebraska, one of the moderates in his party supporting extending the expiring ACA tax credits, was on C-SPAN's Washington Journal program this morning.
Let's get to ACA and these enhanced tax subsidies. Where are you on the 2 discharge petitions offered by moderate Republicans and moderate Democrats to extend the enhanced tax credits for a certain amount of time, but also with some reforms and maybe income limits?
Well, I put out the initial compromise plan back in October with Tom Suozzi, a Democrat from New York.
Not getting any credit for it.
Well, the headline was good that time. The very first compromise proposal, that was in October. But both plans play off of our framework. Now, first of all, we know we need deep reforms to ACA. I disagree with the previous caller. If you just let Affordable Care Act go, it is unaffordable. It's imploding. The costs are skyrocketing. And it got 0 Republican votes when it was passed. And we had 0 Republican votes in the Inflation Reduction Act to put these tax credits on. And they expire on December 31st. But we're in charge now. And we just can't sit and watch this thing implode. Our view, with these 2 different bills, I'm on both of them, by the way, just to answer your question directly. Yes. We think that we need to have a short-term extension of these tax credits so we can do deeper fixes. But we also want to do some reforms. So, for example, the current situation is you can earn up to $600,000 a year and get these tax credits. We think that's too much. Also, a third of the money in these tax credits are going to phantom accounts. They're not even going to individuals and helping their premiums. And so we want to ensure that dollar for dollar, it's lowering people's premiums, and we want to cap it at around $200,000. The 2 plans differ a little bit on that, or stagger it down after $200,000. I'm amenable. I'm negotiable. The key is we got to get 60 votes in the Senate. We are trying to say, hey, Senate, here's some ideas. But we got to get 60 votes there, and whatever passes will likely pass out of the Senate first because you got to get 60 votes.
Well, then that sounds like these ACA subsidies are going to expire on December 31st because the Senate just voted yesterday and they couldn't get to 60 votes.
Well, they couldn't get because they did one that was like just a clean extension for 3 years, I think it was.
Yeah.
That's not going to pass. And then there was the Republican full-on version that we probably need to look at this coming year. But we need to have something right now. And I believe in the end, they're going to look at this a variation of what we've offered in the House and that's what's going to pass the
Before
Senate.
December 31st?
I believe so. There were some senators saying that. Okay, we tried both the Democrat plan and the Republican now we need to have a bipartisan plan. That's what we're offering.
Congressman Don Bacon, Republican from Nebraska, on C-SPAN's Washington Journal program this morning. And the House Republican leadership put out a bill dealing with health care reform today. The Speaker, in a press release, saying House Republicans today released the Lower Health Care Premiums for All Americans Act, legislation that lowers health care premiums, increases health care access, expands health care choices, and brings greater transparency to America's health care system. The legislation will be considered in the House next week. And the House Rules Committee is scheduled to meet next Tuesday, 2 p.m. Eastern, to consider that bill. That's when it could be decided whether an amendment might be allowed to be offered for a straight extension of the ACA tax credits that are expiring. Bloomberg government writes that interstate natural gas pipelines would be easier to permit under legislation the House passed Friday. The Republican-led bill passed on a 213 to 184 vote with Democratic support and would strengthen the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission's lead role in reviewing interstate natural gas pipeline projects by eliminating the need for applicants to obtain water certifications from individual states under the Clean Water Act. Under the legislation, FERC would be empowered to incorporate water quality assessments into existing environmental reviews, expediting the overall process. The bill now heads to the Senate. That was from Bloomberg Government Reporting. Congressman Richard Hudson, Republican of North Carolina, is the sponsor, and he spoke before the vote.
The development of interstate pipelines currently faces significant regulatory and statutory hurdles. In fact, in 2024, we produced less than half the pipeline miles we built just 5 years ago. Our regulatory and statutory permitting process must both protect the environment and reflect the urgency and importance of the projected growth in natural gas demand. Despite Federal Energy Regulatory Commission being granted increased authority under the Energy Policy Act of 2005, pipeline project approvals are consistently delayed because of a lack of coordination between the numerous agencies involved in the permitting process. My bill would make this process more efficient by bringing stakeholders, including agencies, to the table so concerns can be identified early in the process. From there, agencies participating in the permitting process would perform important environmental reviews while complying with schedules established by FERC. H.R. 3668 would also improve the water quality review process by moving that responsibility from the states to FERC. For the past decade, a few states, especially in the Northeast, have used this federally delegated Section 401 authority to obstruct interstate projects. These states have stood outside the FERC-led National Environmental Policy Act process and used their Section 401 authority as a one-state veto of a multi-state project of national significance. This has been detrimental to development of critical pipeline infrastructure.
Congressman Richard Hudson, Republican of North Carolina, on the House floor. Congressman Frank Pallone, Democrat of New Jersey, ranking member on the Energy and Commerce Committee, spoke against the bill.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to H.R. 3668. This bill is an outright assault on our nation's environmental laws. It completely strips states of their ability to enforce clean water laws when it comes to pipelines. And I have to say, Mr. Speaker, that I was surprised when I first saw this provision of the bill. I thought Republicans were the party of states' rights, so surely they wouldn't take away a state's right to enforce their laws and have a voice in the pipeline siting process. But Democrats offered an amendment at our committee markup that would have struck this provision, and Republicans voted against it. So here we are, Republicans on the House floor pushing forward legislation that actively and intentionally sells out states' rights. Much like their promise to lower prices, I guess that was also just an empty campaign slogan. But their bill goes even further than that. It also makes the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, responsible for enforcing the Clean Water Act for pipelines. Now, there's just one problem with that, and that is that FERC has no idea how to do that. At an Energy and Commerce Committee hearing in April, we heard from FERC that they do not currently have the staff expertise or resources to execute this bill properly. So this bill is also a bad solution in search of a non-existent problem. FERC confirmed for us that they have not even seen issues with state clean water permits for pipelines. But as usual, Republicans simply do not care about the facts.
Congressman Frank Pallone, Democrat from New Jersey, ranking member on the Energy and Commerce Committee on the House floor, before the House voted to pass this bill, 213 to 184. This was the last of a week of bills that passed the House on this theme. Politico's E&E News writes the House passed legislation Thursday that would make more than a dozen changes to the Clean Water Act, including establishing new procedures to reduce lawsuits and limiting states' authority to block infrastructure due to environmental concerns. Story from Axios. States are forging ahead with AI laws despite President Trump's new executive order aimed at reining them in. Trump's order is expected to pull states into legal battles and leave the U.S. AI rulebook in flux unless Congress acts. The order looks to gut state AI laws by launching legal challenges and conditioning federal grants on compliance. Policymakers behind key state AI bills scoffed at the order, and some vowed to bring legal action if the White House moves forward with implementation. That was from Axios. President Trump signed that executive order Thursday night in the White House Oval Office.
Well, thank you very much. We have a big signing right now, and we have a tremendous industry where we're leading by a lot. It's the AI, artificial intelligence. I always thought it should be SI, supreme intelligence, but I guess somewhere along the line they decided on the word artificial, and that's okay with me. That's up to them. It's a massive industry. We're leading China. We're leading everybody by a tremendous amount. The electricity is being built by them in every plant. They're building the electricity. We're getting them rapid approvals. But they're spending trillions of dollars, and they can't. Basically, this has a couple of other things that are less important, but one of the things that it has is you have to have a central source of approval. When they need approvals of things, they have to come to one source. They can't go to California, New York, and various other places like Illinois with Pritzker, who's a totally unreasonable person. And they have to have, they're putting all this money in. It's a big part of the economy. And there's only going to be, I think, one winner here. I don't know if anybody agrees with that. I think most people agree. But there's only going to be one winner here, and that's probably going to be the U.S. or China. And right now we're winning by a lot. China has a central source of approval. I don't think they have any approval. They just go and build. But people want to be in the United States, and they want to do it here. And we have the big investment coming. But if they had to get 50 different approvals from 50 different states, you could forget it, because it's not possible to do, especially if you have some hostile. All you need is one hostile actor, and you wouldn't be able to do it. So it doesn't make sense. I didn't have to be briefed on this, by the way. This is real easy business. I mean, this is simple.
President Donald Trump in the White House Oval Office Thursday night, center square, writing about his executive order. While not a moratorium on state-level AI regulations, something U.S. lawmakers voted overwhelmingly to strip out of two major bills this year, the executive order cracks down on states with more restrictive laws. Under the order, states with AI laws that the Trump administration says harm innovation would lose access to crucial broadband funds and could even face lawsuits from the U.S. Attorney General's newly established AI litigation task force. That was from the article at Center Square. A Democratic New York State assemblyman who wrote the state's AI law posted a video today.
Donald Trump just signed an executive order targeting my RAISE Act. Here's why it matters to you. I'm Alex Boris. I'm a computer engineer, New York State legislator, now candidate for Congress in District 12. And I passed the RAISE Act, a bill that provides basic safety standards to keep you and your family safe from extremely advanced AI development. It's supported by 84% of New Yorkers and was passed with overwhelming bipartisan majorities in the state legislature. It currently sits on Governor Hochul's desk. But you know who absolutely hates it? Donald Trump's mega donors. They want to have complete control over the economy, over our education system. They don't want any checks on AI, and they're willing to spend big to do it. So they gave millions of dollars to Trump's reelection, millions of dollars to his effort to tear down the White House and build a ballroom. And what they're getting in exchange is this executive order, which purports to ban states from regulating AI. It's ridiculous. But I'm not backing down. I'm running for Congress to have a national standard to actually keep everyone safe and encourage innovation while protecting American families. That pisses them off. And so they've committed $10 million in a super PAC to defeat little old me's campaign for Congress. I guess you can judge me by my enemies.
New York State Assembly member Alex Boris, a Democrat, posting that video. More from the Axios article on reaction to the president's executive order on AI. Republican governors who previously spoke up against the preemption effort are charging ahead with their own AI plans. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has a proposal for an AI Bill of Rights in the works that would establish parental controls, data privacy, consumer protection, and restrictions on non-consensual use of a person's name, image, and likeness, as well as to protect against data center-related harms. Utah Governor Spencer Cox called for a MAGA-backed alternative that would protect kids and American competitiveness. Reporting from Axios. On Wall Street today, the Dow down 245, NASDAQ down 398, S&P down 73. Washington today continues in a moment.
Today, on a special edition of Ceasefire, we'll feature highlights from our host and Politico White House Bureau Chief Dasha Burns' in-depth interview with President Trump on a range of topics, from the state of the economy and expiring ACA subsidies.
Will you tell Congress to extend those Obamacare subsidies while you work out another deal?
I'm going to have to say, I'd like to get better health care. I'd like to have people buy their own health care.
To rising tensions with Venezuela and the future of U.S. involvement in Ukraine-Russia peace efforts.
This is a war that would have never happened if I were president. So sad. Millions of people are dead. Many, many soldiers. You know, last month they lost 27,000 soldiers.
Plus, political strategists from both sides weigh in on the interview with the president.
Bridging the divide in American politics.
Watch Ceasefire today at 7 p.m. and 10 p.m. Eastern and Pacific, only on C-SPAN.
Ceasefire will also be on C-SPAN Radio, and you can get it as a podcast at cspan.org and wherever you find your podcasts. Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast on the free C-SPAN Now mobile app and wherever you find your podcasts. KOAA-TV in Colorado Springs, Colorado, reporting from Huntsville, Alabama. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth will visit Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama, the new home of U.S. Space Command, on Friday. He'll be attending a designation ceremony for the new headquarters location. U.S. Space Command was in Colorado Springs before President Trump officially announced the move back in September. After months of rumor and speculation, the move was heavily criticized by Colorado lawmakers, calling it a threat to national security and a waste of taxpayer dollars. That was reporting from KOAA-TV in Colorado. And also, Colorado has now sued the Trump administration over this move. Defense Secretary Hegseth made several other stops in Huntsville, including Missile Defense Agency and Boeing, where he spoke to employees.
So I can talk all I want about rebuilding the warrior ethos, which is something we're doing actively in real time. And I can talk about rebuilding the military and all the money we're spending. But if we don't have you doing what you're doing here in this incredible facility, and this is the next layer of it, then that's all talk. So yes, we go out and talk to the troops all the time. We got an incredible military leadership that's committed to driving that change across the organization. But what you do in the assembly lines, what you do right here, is shoulder to shoulder with the men and women in camouflage. It just is. Without our defense industrial base, without Boeing Defense and other companies like it, we don't have those capabilities, which means I have less options to present to the President of the United States, and the men and women who are out in harm's way have less assurance that when they do it, they're going to be protected in the sky or with whatever other system is required. So we're touring the country and working like hell atop the Pentagon to increase speed and efficiency and competition and open architecture and innovation so that it's the best of the best, not just the same. I mean, our best and biggest companies, like Boeing, have to continue to adapt, to continue to iterate, and that's exactly what you're doing. And in every circumstance, we're going to pick the best company that can deliver the best capability. That's our standard. And so we're investing in that. We're trying to change the whole dynamic so there's a lot less bureaucracy and a lot more speed. We may not get the 100% solution every time, but we get the 85% solution faster, which into the hands of the warfighter. So it's for them now when you think of dates down the road that are pretty important for our country and deterring adversaries. So thanks for what you do. Thank your husbands, wives, parents, sons, daughters for that commitment. Everybody does their part. And we get to see the uniform. I was just down in the Caribbean for Operation Southern Spear on our aircraft carriers and our destroyers and our sailors and Marines, what they're doing. It's incredible to see the commitment of our uniform. But without you, they don't have those platforms and they don't have those systems. And we want to showcase to the American people how significant that contribution is and encourage you to just keep going. Go faster. We say that to your leadership all the time. All the time. They're sick of us, and they're going to be sick of us. Because urgency is our buzzword. We don't have time to wait. President Trump doesn't take excuses. Neither do we. We're driving hard, we're driving fast, and that's what we owe our warfighters, and that's what we owe the American people.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth at Boeing Defense in Huntsville, Alabama. He also today unveiled U.S. Space Command's new official sign as he visited places in the city related to the defense industry and the Pentagon itself. From CNN, Admiral Alvin Holsey, the commander of U.S. Southern Command, who reportedly clashed with Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth over the legality of U.S. military strikes in the Caribbean, officially retired on Friday in a ceremony in Florida where he handed the reins of command to his deputy. Holsey thanked his wife, his sons, one of whom is currently deployed as a naval aviator, and others who attended the event. That was from CNN. Here are some of his remarks.
To our partners, Southcom remains on the front line of strategic competition. True partnerships will always be our best deterrents to countering shared security and economic concerns. And we must always be there for like-minded partners, like-minded nations who share our values, democracy, rule of law, and human rights. I concluded my final commanders conference yesterday, and I was clear with my team. To be a trusted partner, we must be credible, present, and engaged. We have worked hard and tirelessly to build relationships and understand requirements across the region. That work must continue across the whole of government to deliver at the point of need to respond to shared threats in our neighborhood. The time is now. We must continue to move with absolute purpose and precision. To the men and women of the United States Southern Command, it has been a tremendous honor to stand shoulder to shoulder with you over the last few years. When I took command, I only asked for one thing, your personal best. And you have exceeded my expectations. You represent the finest among us, and your dedicated efforts will shape this region for years to come. Your vision must be enduring, a secure, free, and prosperous Western Hemisphere. You have everything you need to succeed, and that's each other. Thank you all. God bless this region, our nation, and all who serve. Thank you.
Admiral Alvin Holsey at the relinquishment of command ceremony at U.S. Southern Command in Florida. The new commander is his former deputy, Air Force Lieutenant General Evan Lamar Pettis. A CBS News article on this ceremony reads, Holsey is the latest of over a dozen senior military officers who have either been fired by Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth or who retired early since the beginning of the Trump administration. This is Washington today. The biennial 2025 Walter Cronkite Awards for Excellence in TV Political Journalism were handed out today at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. The awards are administered by the Norman Lear Center at the USC Annenberg School for Communication and Journalism. Many of the recipients spoke about the state of press freedoms in the United States. One winner, CBS 60 Minutes correspondent Scott Pelley. They won for the segment titled Rule of Law, about President Trump's executive orders targeting law firms that the president treats as political enemies.
There was a time when things were worse. You have to go back a little ways. It was 1798. But that's when the Sedition Act was passed, and it was literally codified in law. It was against the law to criticize the federal government or any member of Congress. Editors and reporters went to jail in that period of time for doing their jobs. Fortunately, there was a sunset on that, and 2 years later in the Jefferson administration it went away. But Madison was asked in 1800 what he thought of the Sedition Act, and he wrote in his letter from Virginia words that I think encapsulate this moment better than just about anything I can imagine. Madison wrote that freedom of the press is the right that guarantees all the others. And I am so honored to be in a room with my colleagues who are working so hard every day, taking risks every day to make sure that right endures. Thank you so very much.
Scott Pelley, a correspondent with 60 Minutes on CBS at the Walter Cronkite Awards for Excellence in TV Political Journalism. One of his segments won an award. There was a new category this year, comedic news and commentary. And the winner, The Daily Show on Comedy Central with host Jon Stewart. Jon Stewart spoke by video, followed by producer Shauna Shepard.
I've just been informed that The Daily Show has won a 2025 Walter Cronkite Award. And I just want to say, What? I looked on the website there, it said Walter Cronkite Award honors excellence in political journalism that exemplifies the role of a free press in upholding constitutional principles and the rule of law. And I read that and I thought to myself, well, that's not us. That's not us at all. I mean, we're delighted. Don't get me wrong. But then I found out we're actually the first ever winner in the new category, comedic news and commentary. And it made a lot more sense. That made a lot more sense when I had a little bit of that nuance as far as that's concerned. And we're delighted to be receiving that and really thankful not to be in that other category. Which, and by the way, when I went to the website, really appreciate you guys using a picture of me with an over-the-shoulder of a bird doing cocaine. I don't remember why we were making the bird cocaine joke, but I do know it was Cronkite Award worthy. Now, generally, we try to accept these things in person, but obviously in D.C., as you know, my passport no longer works there. But I'm delighted. The entire team is delighted to be receiving an award of this magnitude. And thank you all so much for bestowing it upon us. I hope it's edible.
Accepting the trophy on Jon Stewart's behalf is The Daily Show producer, Shauna Shepard.
Thank you. On behalf of Jon Stewart, executive producer Jen Flans, the entire Daily Show cast and crew, and our colleagues at Comedy Central and the new Paramount, we want to thank USC Annenberg Norman Lear Center and Annenberg Public Policy Center for this honor. As you just heard from Jon, we don't try to do what you do, but we couldn't do The Daily Show without what you do. Through satire, we try to show how to hold those in power accountable while calling out hypocrisy in ways that journalists sometimes can't. It would have been easy to understand if Jon didn't want to come back to the show, but given all that's happening in the world, sitting on the sidelines wasn't an option for him. When he returned, it was to join an incredible roster of co-hosts: Ronnie Chang, Jordan Klepper, Michael Costa, Desi Leidick, and Josh Johnson. Each brings a distinct, dynamic, and hilarious lens to the show and allows us to cover stories in more ways than at any time in the show's history. Individually, like Jon, they embody the best principles of a free press. Every day, Jon, Jen, and the ensemble challenge us to look at different stories, different sides to a story, ask what is missing about how those stories are being covered. Our debates with each other are as rigorous as any newsroom myself and other colleagues have worked in, although I'll admit, a lot more fun. Jon and Jen Flans have also made sure The Daily Show uses our platform to encourage civic participation among our audience, including driving voter registration, poll worker recruitment, and animal adoption. In a more recent initiative, Indecision, Take a Seat, encourages viewers to run for office, demystifying the process and turning political frustration into public service. That's all in addition to Jon's personal dedication to supporting veterans and first responders. So as we approach the 30th anniversary of The Daily Show next year, We will keep calling out hypocrisy wherever we see it. And on behalf of Jon Stewart, Jen Flans, and the entire TDS team, thank you again for this recognition, and thank you for the hard work you do.
Daily Show producer Shauna Shepard at the Walter Cronkite Awards for Excellence in TV Political Journalism held at the National Press Club today. ABC News writes that President Donald Trump claimed that he is granting a full pardon to Tina Peters, a former Mesa County, Colorado clerk who was sentenced to 9 years on state-level charges for election interference during the 2020 election. However, the president does not have the jurisdiction over state charges, and Colorado officials are pushing back, contending that the president's promise of a pardon is unconstitutional. Trump's announcement, which he made on Truth Social Thursday night, now likely sets up a legal battle for Peters. Peters was convicted in August 2024 for giving an individual affiliated with MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell, a Trump ally, access to the election software she used for her county. Screenshots of the software appeared on right-wing websites that promoted false stories that the 2020 election was fraudulent. That was from ABC News. Colorado's Attorney General Phil Weiser, a Democrat, was interviewed Thursday night on KUSA TV.
Will this work? Will President Trump's pardon actually free Tina Peters?
No. This is a lawless act. It's an act of intimidation. It has no basis in American law. Our system of government gives states authority to run their own criminal justice systems. As you noted, there was a trial. There was a conviction by a jury. There's an appeal to the state courts. All that is happening under the rule of law. This president doesn't respect the rule of law, but he doesn't have authority to undermine how we operate our judicial system here in Colorado.
We have seen this on a number of issues where essentially the Trump administration will take action and dare a court to tell them that it is illegal. My question for you is, what we're seeing a legal maneuver, or do you view it as something else?
This president apparently thinks he can pressure and bully people to his will. That's not going to work in Colorado because we honor the rule of law and believe in a system of justice that has existed in America since we became a republic, which is a system that no matter who you know, no matter what party you are accountable to the law. And that's how we're going to operate in Colorado. We're not going to give in. I've had to sue this president 45 times and counting because we keep getting these lawless demands and we're winning again and again. Those who cave in, those who are folders, they're the ones who end up sacrificing. But as long as we stand strong, invoke the law and do what's right, we're going to honor the system of justice we have here in Colorado.
Colorado Attorney General Phil Weiser, a Democrat on KUSA TV in Colorado on Thursday. Carrie Lake, the acting CEO of U.S. Agency for Global Media and a former Republican nominee for Arizona governor and senator who pursued many lawsuits claiming voter fraud in her election losses, was interviewed today by Lindell TV outside the White House.
Tina Peters is a really good woman. I know her personally. I consider her a friend. Her son died in the line of duty, active duty, Navy SEAL, I believe he was. And to throw her behind bars, the same corrupt people in Colorado who were behind the election malfeasance. And when she was trying to say, we're going to collect the evidence and make sure that we are responsible to the voters and the taxpayers, they throw her in jail for that, in prison for that. She's a woman who's got health problems, and I'm afraid if we don't get her out, that she'll die behind bars. This is an unfair sentence. It's ridiculous. Same thing. They threw the book at her for ridiculous non-crime. The same thing they did with the J6ers. And, you know, come full circle, one of the judges who handled so many of the J6 cases, you might remember him. He was the judge who fell asleep during their trials, and then when he woke up, threw the book at these J6ers who didn't do anything wrong except protest, peacefully. And so I have that same judge over all the cases that have been lodged against our agency. When they get somebody in an agency and we are starting to clean things up, that's when the deep state starts throwing out malicious lawsuits. We've got 5 or 6 malicious lawsuits. They want to tie us up in court. They want to do this with all the other agencies as well. Anywhere where they're bringing reform, they want to get them tied up, tangled up in court with judges who, like mine, actually threw the book at these J6ers for simply protesting at the Capitol.
Carrie Lake, outside the White House on Lindell TV. Today is the 25th anniversary of the Supreme Court's ruling in Bush v. Gore that ended the 2000 presidential election between Republican nominee George W. Bush and Democratic nominee Al Gore. On December 12th, the High Court ruled 7-2 that the recount in Florida violated the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause, finding it lacked uniform standards to determine voter intent. The court also ruled 5-4 that there would not be a new recount, holding that the deadline had already passed, and that made George W. Bush the winner. This past Monday, December 8th, 2025, Benjamin Ginsburg, who was the Bush-Cheney campaign attorney back in the 2000 race, was at a 25th anniversary program hosted by Rice University. The moderator, David Satterfield of that university, asked about lessons learned looking into the future.
We've had out-of-the-ordinary elections twice in the last 25 years, in 2000 and in a very different manner in 2020. And I don't want to confuse or confabulate the two different situations. You want to talk about what those differences were, their impact, and how, you've talked about 2000 rather. How can the issues raised in 2020, which are inherently partisan and political, be addressed as we look to 28?
A really interesting question. I mean, first of all, there are real differences between 2020 and 2000. Like 2000 was really close. 2020, narrowest margin was 11,000 votes in a state. You don't make up 11,000 votes in a recount. What 2020 did was challenge the accuracy of some of the basics of the electoral system, as well as public confidence in the outcome of the electoral system. So I think it behooves all election officials to be very careful with their voter registration lists, with how they do mail voting, with basically doing all the logic and accuracy tests which they do with their machines to be sure the machines are tabulating accurately beforehand. And those issues will become part of 2028. The public confidence part is perhaps even more important. And I think that election officials have really responded to the challenges of their systems not being reliable in some pretty positive ways. There's far more transparency because there was a need for it, with election officials sort of opening up the doors to the election offices, letting people kick the tires of the election system, doing Ask Me Anything town halls. I mean, the downside is election officials, who are our most dedicated public servants, I think, are subject to threats and harassment like they've never been. But they have responded with being open and transparent, which is really important. And it behooves people who have doubts about the reliability of elections to get out and actually participate in those elections, to become poll watchers or election officials and see how the system actually works. There are, roughly speaking, 11 stages of the election process. And each one of those stages has a series of safeguards in it to guard against all the mistakes that might take place. It is important for election officials to explain it, and for people who doubt the reliability of systems to kind of get off the couch, turn off the TV, and go look for yourself.
Benjamin Ginsburg, who was the Bush-Cheney campaign attorney in the year 2000 at Rice University, this past Monday, interviewed by David Satterfield, the Rice Public Policy Director. And today is the 25th anniversary of the Supreme Court's ruling that ended the contested election and gave the victory to George W. Bush. C-SPAN has a special page at our website, cspan.org, with video about the Bush v. Gore Supreme Court decision anniversary, the full event with Benjamin Ginsburg you just heard, plus the Supreme Court oral argument from 2000 in that case, and lawyers speaking to the press after, and much more. Find it at cspan.org. CBS News writing that President Trump will host members of the 1980 U.S. Olympic men's hockey team, famous for defeating the Soviet Union in the Miracle on Ice, at a bill signing Friday to award congressional medals in the team's honor. Legislation will award all the players with congressional gold medals to recognize the 45th anniversary of the U.S. victory at the 1980 Winter Olympic Games. The bill passed the House and Senate in September. That was from CBS News. Here is a bit of President Donald Trump in the Oval Office.
We're delighted to be joined today by true legends of American sports history, the heroes for the entire nation. The 1980 U.S. Olympic ice hockey team. This was one of the biggest moments that I've ever seen in sports, and I like sports. These are the men who gave us one of the most storied athletic wins of all time. It's called the Miracle on Ice, and I guess that's what it was. We're with us today by players like Jim Gregg, Steve Janicek, Bill Baker, Dave Christian, Ken Morrow, Jack O'Callahan, Mike Ramsey, Neil Bratt, Mike Urizioni, Rob McClanahan, Buzz Schneider, Dave Silk, Phil Bercoda, and numerous others. And what I'd love to do, when you have all of these media people, it's a nice, slow afternoon. Nothing's too slow around here. I think we just did a very good job with Thailand and Cambodia. We had them stopped, and I've been saying I stopped 8 wars, but they started shooting at each other 2 days ago. It wasn't good. And we got it, I think, straightened out today. So Thailand and Cambodia is in good shape. So we get a lot done. 8 wars. Nobody's ever stopped 8 wars. We have 1 more to go. The easiest one, I thought, would be a country that you're somewhat familiar with, Russia and Ukraine. But a lot of progress is being made even there.
President Donald Trump in the White House Oval Office with members of the 1980 U.S. Olympic ice hockey team, the Miracle on Ice team that defeated the Soviet Union on its way to a gold medal. The president also accepting a white cowboy hat that all of the players were wearing, replicas of the same hats the team wore at the opening ceremony in the Lake Placid Games back in 1980. Thanks for listening to Washington Today. A reminder that this week's special edition of C-SPAN Ceasefire features highlights from host Dasha Burden's in-depth interview with President Trump on a range of issues, state of the economy, and expiring ACA subsidies, rising tensions with Venezuela, future of involvement in Ukraine-Russia peace efforts, along with a political panel, Republican strategist Mark Short and Democrat strategist Adriana Elrod. That's C-SPAN Ceasefire tonight at 7 p.m. and 10 p.m. Eastern Pacific, or get it anytime as a podcast. Also, a reminder that the C-SPAN networks are now available on Hulu Plus Live TV. You can learn more at hulu.com/live TV. Have a good night and weekend.